Roll it.
All right, so the
Lay it
one
on me.
that I want to work with,
What?
players working at cross purposes, balance and theme.
Oh,
yeah, this
cool. This came up in our game of Traveler.
God,
which
that was
yesterday.
That was yesterday.
Yesterday was just really long.
It was a long
It was a
day.
very
So,
long day.
My
No one
this
tell me about it.
ties into what we were
Mhm.
discussing earlier with the DM and the players kind of having a cooperative relationship.
Mhm.
When you have players working against each other, how do you balance it so that everyone has fun, but also how do you keep the storyline on track if you're the DM and you have
Yeah, I
players?
like this. This is a little more like zoomed in than my question was. I like that. So I have some opinions about this. For the longest time, I was sort of like the D&D guy at like my school, and so I would always be the one responsible for teaching new players how to play D&D. And for people who aren't familiar with role-playing games, especially teenagers who aren't familiar with role-playing games, when they first get thrust into one, they just go nuts. And they're like, oh, I'm in this fake world where there aren't really consequences. And so I'm just going to run around, and I'm going to kill people, and I'm
You're
going
an
to take
apex
stuff.
predator.
Yeah. I'm like, I have twice as many hit points and an actual attack modifier as everyone else in every level, level 0 NPC. So I'm just going to run around and kill people and take their stuff.
One
And-
point.
Yeah, but then inevitably there's one character who's like maybe played by a little bit more of a person who like has played RPGs before, or like is just kind of a lawful good and like playing that, and then there's this conflict. So for a long time I got really frustrated with that as a DM because it was what I ran into over and over again. And so what I would do is I would say I just wrote off the idea of inter-party conflict entirely. And I was like, no, that is not going to happen in the games that I want to run. But then I saw the Avengers.
Right.
And I was like, wait a minute, there's a way to do this right. And so now basically whenever there's potential inter-party conflict, I'm like, as long as we can be like the Avengers, we will be okay.
Well, right. I mean, first of all, anybody who has had some of these frustrations as a DM should go watch Dungeons, Dragons, and Bitches. It's a video from Key and Peele where they talk about the futility of
Controlling your players.
Yeah. I believe it's called Dungeons, Dragons, and Bitches.
Yeah.
That's the name of the short.
Yeah.
I believe it's from season 1 of Key and Peele.
I think it's episode 4 if
yeah.
you want to watch it on Hulu.
Yep. It's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, it's just amazing. You should watch it. So the other thing I was gonna say is the thing about I think what you're talking about with this Avengers thing, this I don't want to say justification, but this Avengers understanding of it, it's not about necessarily being like the Avengers. It's about having the conflict be part of the story.
Yeah.
And not only part of the story, but part of these characters' lives. Like I mean, because the thing is, like at the end of the day, unless your character is deliberately a sociopath, in which case the consequences are going to follow him. Like, I mean, because consequences follow sociopaths.
Unless you're playing Paranoia.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how you get promoted.
Yeah. So, but I mean, like, so consequences follow sociopaths. So, like, if you're going to play your character deliberately as a sociopath, the DM has not only the right, but the obligation to represent his world in a way that would be realistic and punish this character. The other things that I feel like you gotta really make sure, and it's because most players who are gonna get reckless like that aren't the type of player who are gonna recognize that their character is being punished and not that they themselves are being punished.
that was another thing that I was going to talk about. Is how
you can shut people off to turn people off to D&D because, oh yeah, I played once and my DM killed me because he's a dick. Like, I mean, like, you don't want to ruin people, leave people with a sour taste in their mouth from that. Like, so I think one of the things that I learned from Tobias's handling of it in the Traveler campaign the other day is, first of all, Roman and I both were approaching it in a rather mature way.
Yeah, I was really impressed. I hadn't played an RPG with Roman in a long time. He handled that.
And the other thing too, like,
knew what he wanted. His character wanted. He went in.
Roman and I both stuck to our characters' guns on a lot of things, and then the other thing that we did was we put it in the hands of the dice. Most of the time when we could, we put it into the rules. Like we, like if we thought to ourselves, what would our character do? And now let's let the dice decide how this conflict's going to go. And it turned out that I didn't figure out that he was the one that was betraying me, and Tyler is frustrated as hell because I know that Roman's the traitor, but but my Trent Garrett doesn't know.
Yeah. So I think that's the thing.
That Swaggy P is the traitor.
Yeah, I think that's the thing about it.
Who would suspect Swaggy P?
Who would suspect Swaggy P?
Not to get a little too technical here, but to bring it back to Gary Allen Fine's Share Fantasy, that he talks about this idea of sociological layers. So you have the player, the persona, and the person. So there's the person who is me. The player is me being the person that is familiar with the rules, and then the persona is the character I am playing. And so because you and Roman have played enough RPGs to know how to move between those roles carefully and not metagame it, but also not let your feelings get hurt because of it. Like, because you and Roman both went into it being like, okay.
Oh, I mean, Roman and I were talking about that last night. We were like, he was like, oh, you almost caught me there. And I was like, I know. And it was actually really funny.
But also, like, it was deliberate. It wasn't something that like spontaneously started happening in the game. It was like, oh, when we were making characters, like, oh, what if Roman is a secret agent that's working against the conspiracy that Tyler is trying to thwart? And so you guys were both like, oh, that's a cool idea.
Right.
And we had that sort of from the beginning, and you both agreed to that before the dice even hit the table.
Right.
And so that way, then I think that's something we've been doing in our Thursday D&D group, where like we have the conflict, but like we're like before the dice hit the table, we talk about it, at dinner, and we'd be like, oh, wouldn't it be kind of cool if we had this tension between Kai's character and Jose's character, and then that way when we actually start doing it out, people's feelings don't get hurt. Because I know, like, I know as an experienced role player, I can move through the layers, but there's been times where like it's harder to distinguish. Like, even as someone who is an experienced role player, like I can't always separate my feelings from my person, my persona, and my player.
I think the secret here is really just you need to define your character ahead of time. Because even in Call of Cthulhu, where it's like you aren't going to be. I had Kai one time try to become a cultist in my game. And, like, he didn't tell me that ahead of time, so he was just making really stupid choices. Like, it all made sense at the end when you revealed it to me, but I find that I can have difficulty keeping players on track working as a team if they don't set out with a real clear vision of what their character is about.
Yeah. Sure.
Because then I can't tailor the story to accommodate their characters' choices if they're just deciding in the middle of gameplay, like, no, my guy doesn't like dealing with this.
It really comes down to just being able to not metagame it.
Yeah.
So the thing is, like, Jared knows that Jose and Kai have beef, and Jose and Kai know that,
their characters.
I don't remember their characters' names. But really, there is no beef between Jose and Kai.
Right.
There is beef between
their characters.
Mordecai and...
You didn't see them duke it out?
So I think that way, because that's the thing is, like, I feel like Kai may have not have told you that, or maybe not want to share that information with the rest of the party.
We were playing it at 3 a.m.
Okay.
Was this during the game? Oh, this was during one of the game nights?
Yeah,
I was amped up, but everyone else was falling asleep.
Right. So. It was right after your run-through of the Avengers.
Oh, actually, no, I remember hearing about this. Yeah. No, I think I ran into you in the kitchen. You were just, like, shaking your damn head. Like, you were like... Of course, like this is what happened, and I remember thinking to myself, I was like, it feels about right, doesn't it? After you smash my flowchart, you have to deal with the cultists.
That made sense as hell.
No, I'm just teasing.
Oh yeah, no, I know. But this is the thing we both we know.
You Hulk smashed my timeline. He was a cultist on the low, and you it was messing with you as a DM. I think the thing you were talking about though about the person, persona, and character, or whatever, or was it?
It's the person.
Yeah.
The player, and the persona.
Person, player, persona. When you get to being the dungeon master, you maybe have some personas with the NPCs, but the real problem when you're the dungeon master is the player.
Yeah.
Where you're like, wait a minute, no, because like I'm arguably the most important player.
Yeah.
And like you feel like, okay, well I'm the player that's creating this world right now. And you guys, as characters, don't fit into the story I want to tell, and that's when you that's when that really gets to be a problem.
Yeah.
So
that's why I think, but when I'm guilty of this as anyone.
Yeah.
I come up with a story and then try to make the characters fit into it.
Yeah.
That's why I think every session of every RPG, the first session of every RPG, like campaign, should be all the players and all the character, and then all the DMs and all the whatevers.
Yeah.
They sit down together. They make characters and they decide what, at least maybe not what exact story you are going to tell, but like what kind of story you want to tell.
Right.
So that way you don't get a thing where like, oh, we're all playing D&D and like Kai wants to be a secret agent and Jared wants to be a cultist, and you want to just be a knight in shining armor, and Tyler wants to like be a master assassin. Like,
that used to happen to me all the time when we first started playing D&D because I loved playing paladins, and Jake and Fadrian, my brother and his friend, they loved playing rogues all the time, and I was just like. I always ended up being this paladin on a party full of freaking thieves, and it drove me nuts. Yeah. It was so hard to get anything done because I'd be like, okay, well, I'm trying to help my my deity and further their cause, and they're like, yeah, let's steal some crap. Yeah. And then even in a couple times like that, our DM had this idea for a quest. That wasn't about my deity or their thievery. Yeah. And we were both just like, okay, this is kind of interesting, maybe. Also, real quick, some snow just fell off the railing, which means snow has melted.
That's cool.
Sorry, this is just really exciting to me.
We live in New England.
Where exactly did we leave off?
I was explaining how the first time I remember us being deliberate about a campaign is when we did the thief campaign. So we had, mostly rogues, a few people multi-classed into either a ranger or wizard.
I made him that one guy who gave you missions and was like, we would certainly never suggest that you like the most ham-fisted plausible deniability ever. Oh my god, that was so great. Funny.
So that was when we were deliberate. We were like, we want to do a thing where we can just run around and steal things. We had starting a guild, and then we stole that world's equivalent of the Ark of the Covenant. And sold it to 2 churches and made $1 million.
We sold it to 2 churches
at the same time. Yeah. That was so cool.
Oh my god, that was nuts. That's one of the things where it's I feel like D&D can be off the rails sometimes in a good way. I hope that we didn't.
We were all on board for it being off the rails in that way.
That's true.
Also, that was one of the few times we got to play with Elliot King.
Yeah, he was great.
He was amazing.
Yeah,
playing with him is so much fun.
Yeah. So
this one's for Elliot.
I should have made 2 sandwiches.
I know the feeling.
Being deliberate about your campaign, being aware of meta, gameplay, mechanic stuff.
Yeah, especially for the DM, I think.
And being willing to pause the game to have a conversation about the players or about the person. If someone's feelings get hurt in a role-playing game, maybe you need to pause the game to talk about it.
One of the most rugged experiences of my actual life, I'm not even kidding, was I had a D&D campaign where this person was an experienced at role-playing games. They had been in several weekly campaigns and stuff like that. So I trusted them, and I was playing with people that they play with often. And this person started killing people when our group already had a plan on how we were going to rob these people, and we were being super stealthy about it. And then they started just killing the people.
What is that? GCC?
This was with Sam King.
Right,
yeah. And then this person got mad at my character for trying to interfere with them doing stuff, and then this person started making fun of me, physically making fun of my appearance and all this stuff, just being really pestering. And I was trying not to let that get to me, but this person was trying to murder these people that we had already robbed, and we weren't murderers. We were doing it for the money, and we weren't looking for any casualties. Yeah. So then we ended up, they were chasing down these people in a caravan to kill them, and I ended up having to do PvP, which I don't like to do. Yeah. I mean, I never like PvP combat in role-playing games. I just don't.
Yeah, see, that's the other thing about that, doing conflict, not combat.
Yeah, I mean,
if you want to have Thor and Hulk fight each other,
it does have to. It can't happen. But for me as a player, it's not very comfortable. Almost never, and especially not this case. And I ended up beating the guy to death with his shield. Yeah. I had to wrestle him and then beat him to death. The shield, some Tyrion Lannister shit. And it was rugged. And then I still had to sit in that house with this kid who I had just murdered his character, and he didn't stop with the personal insults and stuff like that. And I had to basically sit there and continue to be insulted until I could leave. And
that campaign was just a mess because it was there was
Yeah, there was too many players, and like the DM wasn't prepared.
No one was. Yeah, DM wasn't prepared, and we jumped into it too quickly, where we didn't have that conversation at the beginning. Like, okay, who are we? What are we trying to do?
Yeah, but the point I was going to make with that is that even if the personal insults came out, and the personal insults were really just like
he was like,
and I talked smack about the character, and when the players started playing the character,
it's moving in between the layers.
Right, when the player started making it personal about me, about my person, and his character started acting in a way that didn't fit his character, I went after the player, not the person or the character, but the player, and I came to him and said, hey, you're not playing your character correctly, like, because that's not.
You're not helping the group.
You're not helping the group, and I said so, like, and I didn't make it about his person. I made it about his play and his character, but I never made it about his person. It's hard for a person to not take a criticism of their play personally,
and sometimes it's hard to even have a person take a criticism of their character,
right,
and not take it personally.
Some people bring too much ego to the table when they're playing.
It was. I remember.
That was a terrible experience.
I remember, especially it was pretty bad for Thadrian, just because he was Thadrian's friend, and Thadrian was also the DM,
right?
And so he had to not only have all the stress of just managing like 10 players,
and I remember Thadrian looking at me because he's my brother and he was my DM at the time. When I made the call where I was like, I have to kill this guy. Yeah. And normally there would be a discussion with the DM where the DM would become my brother and I would become Tyler. Yeah. And we would talk for a second like, are we really doing PvP? Yeah. And there wasn't that talk. He just looked. He just kind of looked at me and I looked at him. Yeah. I shrugged and it happened. And nobody left there happy. Like no. And it was a real bummer.
I sort of like deliberately forgot to do about it tonight.
It was a terrible night.
Roll for sanity.
Yeah. Some people have this kind of anti-deliberateness about them, where they're like, I don't like to be too deliberate of things. I like to be spontaneous. But like when it comes to like meta communication about your person, character, and player, like that stuff is important because it's like like when you're a kid in church and they tell you to like love the sinner, hate the sin. Yeah. It's kind of that. That's like it's kind of a trite example, but I think it really applies. It's like I could be pissed at your character, but if you're playing your character well, I'm not mad at you. Yeah. I'm really not. And that took me a while to get there as a player. Obviously, I've been playing since I was 7.
Yeah. I remember I always used when actually in my presentation for that research project I talked about when I was talking about. I used a classic example of that time I accidentally electrocuted your character.
Oh yeah. I was like,
which is a great story. We still tell this story,
right? I was using a decanter of endless holy water, and I was shooting at like a geyser at a giant iron golem
to try to rust it.
And then
I, with my encyclopedic knowledge of the monster's manual, was like, oh, if an iron golem gets hit by any electrical attack, they are stunned and cannot act on the next turn. And so I was like, I'm going to use chain lightning on the iron golem,
and I'm like covered in water, and connected by a stream of water, and to a thing made of metal that's covered in water. Yeah. Like it was just like
And so I remember Thade was like, "You sure you want to do that?" And I was like, "Yeah, obviously." And like he was like, "Okay," and then you got hit for 75.
75 damage.
Luckily, you were the barbarian, and you were a little bit higher level than everyone else, and so you survived. You were okay.
I turned out being okay, but like
Tyler was pissed at Tobias that day,
and I think part of it too is like. If you really think about it, you were thinking about it in a metagame way where you're like, oh, I know this thing about
that's the other thing. Yeah. I had trouble with that when I was growing up because I was read the books really well, so like I knew every monster's weakness, though my character should not.
Right, and your character would have, because all three, the character, the player, and the person should have thought about electricity and water. Yeah.
But I was just so being like, oh, I'm exploiting a monster's weakness. Like, this is like... the gamer in me is like so pumped right now.
So honestly, I'd say exercise your layers. Exercise your layers and keeping them separate. And I think that's like the big thing that's super important.
Yeah.
So talking about it beforehand with your DM and your party, keeping things things that keeping your layers separate, exercising your layers, make character stuff about characters, and keep your play about your character and less about your persona. And then
also incorporating into the story as a whole. I think.
Incorporating.
Don't just have conflict for the sake of conflict. Like make it a plot hole.
Right.
If I had to rank the layers in order of importance of having your shit together, I'd say first of all, having the persons be acceptable. Like everyone at the table needs to be cool with each other. No one there can be a dick, and that's really the DM's job, just to make sure that
it's interesting the way that happens. The DM also gets a lot of the sort of organizational and like social responsibilities kind of as well.
Right.
I'm the one who got our group together, and I'm the one who organizes when we meet and stuff like that. It's interesting to see how that dynamic plays out. That's almost another video.
And then after that, you got characters, making sure the characters are fleshed out. And least important in my mind is the player component, because you can always sort of guide a new player and just sort of help them out without spoiling stuff for them.
Because
guide them.
Their character would know how to use their magical spell.
Exactly.
So they would, But yeah, so I think that this person player persona thing, while originally made for role playing games, I think also applies to a lot of things in life. I know I have another video that I made for one of my college courses where I talk about it being applied to board games. And so I think it is something that I mean, first of all, it's a one book by one college professor from 20 years ago. So like, it's not exactly it's not a book that everyone's read. But I think that format and that way of thinking about the person, the player, and the persona is something that all people who play role playing games should know. I think like if you're going to play role playing games, you need to have this model exposed to you.
Even like Betrayal at the House on the Hill, which we were doing last night, and it was a great deal of fun. I think that could be a very volatile. I mean, like it was fine with us because and I mean your dad's more experienced than all of us with this definition and whatnot. But I could definitely see there being difficulties with people feeling betrayed at the House on the Hill.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's especially in recent years in board games, but now it's coming over to video games, which is so exciting. The sort of the 4 versus 1 or the co-op with Defector is a thing. I think Sword Coast is going to be what I wanted Shadow.
We're hoping that Sword Coast will make up for it.
If I make a sandwich and shout my responses,
go
you'll miss my beautiful face.
But so I think that when there is that potential of like the 4 versus 1 or the co-op with Defector, like that can come up a lot too. So you need to be You need to be okay with it.
But I think the thing about Betrayal that for me anyway immediately made it not feel like super annoyed by it is it puts it in the hands of the mechanics.
Because it's not like James chose to be the Defector.
Right.
Like, that's what the little Matrix told us to do.
Yeah, and I think the thing about that is but with a game like Resistance, the thing is there aren't that many mechanics in the game.
Yeah.
And when like basically you have to look into each other's eyes and tell lies. And like the thing is people get so butthurt during that game. Like people get really, really mad. Yeah. And it's because there aren't mechanics to blame these things on as readily as there are on other things. Yeah. I was like, oh, you're the traitor. You've got a series of. There's only certain things that you can do, and I get it.
And also,
it's like with
the example you use of the Resistance, it's not. Oh, you rolled dice and you beat me. It's you lied to me.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's
James Nolan didn't lie.
It's not. That's what I'm saying about mechanics. The die being the mechanic. Yeah. There's no dice. It's
the mechanic in Resistance is lying.
Is lying. Yeah. So it's easier for people to get really upset.
Spartacus is a game that I feel like
you need to play.
I haven't played Spartacus
yet. I feel like there weren't any hurt feelings, but I feel like that is a dangerous game because the mechanics aren't spelling out.
Yeah, they basically in the rulebook of that game they encourage you to make a promise to someone but don't keep it.
Oh.
They come out and say that.
Yeah, I mean
you're just allowed to do that.
That's nuts.
Yeah, it's so cool. That game is fabulous.
Oh, it's fantastic.
But I love the way it is sort of like 3 mini games,
Yeah.
That game's played in 3 phases. There's like the intrigue political phase, then there's the market bidding phase, and then there's the gladiatorial combat phase. So it's like it scratches a lot of my itches all at once. But it's all presented in a very it's aesthetically pleasing as all hell. Like that is one of the most beautiful games I've ever played.
Yeah.
And all the components are really nice, but then also it has like this nice theme of like, oh, I feel like I'm like this like shady political ruler in Rome, and I'm like screwing over my friends, and it's
You're all horrible people, and it's lovely.
Yeah.
So just to wrap up that topic.
Yeah.
So be purposeful with your character creation in maybe your party composition.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about it with your DM. Exercise your different strata, like about your player and persona.
Mm-hmm.
Like recognize this deception or crossplay as part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can, put it into the hands of the mechanics, so you don't necessarily feel it's so personal.
And when you can, incorporate it into the story as like a central plot
right,
point.
as a plot point, yeah. Or even if it is a side quest, but like, put it in there.